looks like people can see it. Thank you. All right. So one action I was going to play a support card, which I played the factory, which generates currency for me. Currency is a lot like mana, or I guess it's called mana in a lot of games. So what you spend to play other cards. And then I have one warrior in my hand. I can play him. He costs 5, which will take me to 0. I can, but I don't have any other warriors anyway. And then I will end my turn with 1 action left. With the digital version, when you end your turn, any actions left are automatically converted into destiny for your next turn. Or you can manually do it, called meditating. But I will just end my turn. Let's see, the simple AI is probably going to beat me after I said he was easy to beat. So that will be very classy for my stream. So we drew another factory. So combat armor is a attachment, which takes 1 action. You can attach it to another warrior in play. So I'm going to attach it to this guy, which, before Brian says anything, I believe is a bug. I don't think the combat warhead in the final version should be allowed to have equipment, but we'll just act like that's fine for demo purposes. You'll see the number changed, meaning that his armor stat went up, so now he has 8 armor. And for fun, we'll give him a gun as well. Now, this is a temporary screen here, which is for testing purposes, but you can see that he has combat armor and he has the gun that I've given him. The gun makes his shoot value higher and the opponent's shoot value lower, which I am out of actions, so I'll let the opponent do his thing. So the thing that made this AI fun is that we made this deck based on some new ideas that Brian had, where we wanted to kind of make you could call it a weenie deck, or all of these undead legionnaires, the more of them that get into play, they make each other stronger. And the more of them in play will make the Centurion even stronger. So this deck can get out of hand very quickly if you let it. But we hopefully won't be doing that. So when you want to attack somebody, you drag your card to their card and release it. And another temporary screen, the attacker who initiates the combat chooses the initial method of attack, which you can do fighting hand-to-hand, or you can do shooting. Most all warriors can choose between fighting or shooting. It's basically just you want to control the battle plan a little bit. Maybe, like for this example, my shoot is very high, but my fight is very low. So I wouldn't want to fight because this guy would lose. I want to shoot. And during combat, it's your attack versus the opponent's armor value. You don't have persistent hit points. It's basically if your attack value breaks through their armor, they take a wound. If they take 2 wounds, they die, and you earn points towards victory. So in this case, I'm attacking with 6 with shoot. He's attacking back with 5. So my 6 versus his 5 armor, I will hurt him. His 5 versus my 8 armor, he will not hurt me. So we'll go ahead and attack him. We'll shoot. He turns red, marking that he is now wounded. And I will take the rest of my turn by playing a couple guys, and then let him do his. So the core gameplay of Doomtrooper, I feel, is quite simple. It's get your warriors out, but not too many, because you don't want to feed points to your opponent, but you have to have enough in play so that your opponent doesn't get free points. If you don't have any warriors out, you can do what's called a sabotage, which basically means you attack the player directly and you just get free points. And nobody wants to just let their opponent win. So you always want to have at least one guy out, even if you know he's going to lose or he's going to get wounded like this guy did in 1 turn. But you do not want to just keep feeding guys to them. So you have to get guys out, get them stronger, do what you can. Just going to try to just kill a guy for demo purposing. So here. So we killed that guy. His value was 2. The little square is his value. We're still working on what icon we want. In the original game, it was a diamond. We played around with different currency symbols to try to make that more apparent, but we haven't decided on what we're going to use yet. So for now, it's a lovely square. But he's worth 2. I killed him. I got 2 promotion points towards victory. So the idea is I will keep doing that. I'll keep buffing my guys. I'll keep playing additional support cards, attachments, and other types of cards to ensure that I win. But to save myself the embarrassment of losing to the AI, I think that's about all I need to show. So if anybody has any specific questions about the game or about the Kickstarter, I would love to answer. You can type it in Twitch. If not, I can just hang out and open some old Doomtrooper cards or something. But we are hoping to be successful in the Kickstarter as soon as possible, which guarantees that we can finish this version that we have, we can get it out and people can start playing it. And our main focus with the completion of the Kickstarter will be balancing the game, making it fun, making sure that all the cards are useful, not just the ultra rare cards that people chase after, but there should be some way to play some of the smaller cards and make them useful in a deck. So that's our main focus. It always has been solid multiplayer, solid gameplay, solid statistical play, but we want to do so much more with the graphics and the interface, the features, the quest system, like all of the bells and whistles that we can possibly add. And if we go above our goal on the Kickstarter, we'll see how many of those that we can promise to the backers. If we don't go high enough to hit all the stretch goals, we still would love to work on those features, but being a small company, it's going to slow down the process a little bit. Lundstream says, is there a mulligan at the start of the game? Yes, it's called, in this game it's called the Cardinal's Gift, which means if you don't get any warriors in your first hand, you can Cardinal's Gift to make sure you start with one warrior. Because if you don't have a warrior in play by the second turn, your opponent can start attacking you, and it's just not fun when you're trying to draw cards, trying to draw a warrior and not getting one. So we like to guarantee you have at least one warrior. We're going to be talking to the community about an idea Steve had, who is helping with the design at Secret Cal level, where we just keep dealing and shuffling until you get a warrior. On one hand, that seems awesome because people are going to mulligan to get a warrior anyway. On the other hand, it feels a little weird to me because we're forcing you not to get the hands you draw. But from a digital standpoint, it might not matter. So that's definitely something that we'd love to discuss in Discord if anyone has an opinion on the mulligan system. I see, is there a reason to play weak warriors? So yes, for example, if you have no warriors out and your opponent has, say, this Centurion here who's worth 5. If I have no warriors out, he can sabotage me directly and he gets half of his value rounded up. So he would get 3 points towards victory no matter what. You don't want that. So I could play a 1-1-1 guy, and a normal 1-1-1 guy would get wounded the next turn, and then the following turn he would get killed and he would feed 1 point to the opponent. So I can basically stall the opponent's promotion point acquisition by playing the low guy, which will take 2 turns. Of course, there's a keyword called Slayer, which means kill a guy in 1 hit. If the opponent has Slayer, which some of these evil Dark Legion guys do, it won't matter as much because he'll kill him in 1 turn and then he'll be sabotaging me the next turn. But the Longshore card that I played here, for example, can take 2 actions to play this Bannerman, which is where he came from. So I could keep churning those guys out to block his sabotage ability, but A, he would get more and more powerful as you're seeing him do now, and B, I'd be using 2 of my 3 actions every turn just to stall the game, which kind of hurts my strategy. So, and yeah, I was kind of answering the Longshore question. So Longshore used to be different in the classic game. It's one of the cards that we've revisited to try to make more useful. I believe it used to do +2 armor to all of your Mishma faction warriors, but we wanted it to be more useful in more decks, so we've been playing with this ability where well, it was 2 actions to create a Bannerman. We've already tweaked it now to 1 action to create a Bannerman, but you can only do it once per turn. So this is an example of how we're testing out different things to see how people use them, if they like them, if they fall into strategy, or if they don't. And the Bannermen are neat because if you activate them, they will give every other Mishma warrior in your squad +1 to all stats. So that can become in handy quite a bit, where it will allow you to get that extra point you needed to stay alive a turn, or that extra point you needed to break through an opponent's armor. looking? Julie, no, I think Julie talking about the Bannerman. The Bannerman, she's talking about the frontline ability. There is a cartel guardsman who has a new ability we've tested called Frontline, which forces the opponents to attack him first. So they basically guard your other warriors. So if you play a frontline warrior and then like a weaker warrior that maybe buffs your other guys, then you know that the weaker warrior is going to be alive longer, but the frontline guy is going to die immediately. And that's one thing we've learned in the balancing is introducing more cards that can kill in one shot, which is called Slayer, or cards that have to be attacked first, which is called Frontline. Those abilities are worth a lot. Like if you have a Frontline guy or a Slayer guy that's powerful, you can win the entire game with one card, depending on the strategy you wrap around it. So that's one of the challenges of making a collectible card game like this is even in trying to fix the balance that was wrong in the previous game, and not wrong due to fault of anybody, just when you have 12 to 1400 cards, it's very easy for some to become overpowered, and you can't patch a physical game. It's very easy, even when trying to fix those problems, to introduce new ones where the game becomes skewed in the different direction than you were going for. So I see, what is this, Iceman's Wii, however you say that. 20 years since you had someone to play. That kind of defines why we're doing this stream in the first place. I am now 35 years young, and I believe Steve is as well. And we played when we were probably 13 to 16 range. So it's been about 20 years since we played Doomtrooper together. And I'll admittedly almost teared up when I first played an online game against Steve, and I dragged a guy and attacked his, and then ended my turn and watched him do his, and we were talking on voice chat, and it was pretty surreal because when you love a game like this, and I spent the last 20 years collecting the cards, you never think that it'll actually work out, especially with a game like this that has changed hands and who owned it so many times and wasn't even an American company. I didn't think I ever had a chance of finding it. And then I mean, as I said in the video, for the 40% of you that actually watched it, the fact that I talked to my former boss at Obsidian and he knew Fred, who owned Doomtrooper, was just a crazy coincidence. And then found out that Fred and I had other mutual friends, like our friend Alon, who has done very well for himself on Kickstarter with games like Exploding Kittens. We've crossed paths with so many of the same people. And we had one meeting, and I told him my vision that I was gonna make this crazy cross-platform version of Doomtrooper and keep the budget low and do a Kickstarter. And other than being a few months late on the Kickstarter, sorry Fred, I think we've delivered on everything that we've said so far. So there's no reason to think that the balance and the new cards and the graphics and the new platforms are all in the future. It's just a question of how quick we can get to them and how fast we can maybe hire some people to help with it. Let's see. Card limits as in maximum numbers of the same card. So the current rules, as us with Brian got together and discussed, was yes to limit the cards per deck, but some cards could be allowed to be unlimited. For example, the opponent here has like 10 Undead Legionnaires in his deck, because that card has the unlimited keyword, which is something may not make it to the final game. We're still testing it. But the unlimited keyword allows you to have as many of you want in the deck. You could have 40 Undead Legionnaires if that strategy works. And the funny thing is that strategy might work, and it might work too well. So we are going to revisit it and see what happens, because they make each other more powerful, and they only cost 2. So even if you don't attack, you could play 1 per turn, which would quickly snowball into you having guys that are like 10, 10, 10, but only giving 2 points when I kill them. And that is not a fun gameplay to be playing. So we are currently testing 40 card decks with 3 instances per card, but we've talked about 4 per card up to 60 card decks. We've talked about allowing the player to have 40 to 60, and they can pick their own limit in that range. Not entirely sure which one will end up the most balanced, but that's part of the reason that we're doing alpha tests and beta tests and trying to invite people gradually in because we want to get feedback on how it feels, get statistics on the back end of what cards are being used, how big are people's decks, how many cards are in there, which cards aren't being used, and that'll help us balance it quite a bit. Oh, I see Brian. Brian's under a different name now. Yeah, 3 is what we're currently testing, Brian. But I mean, you made the unlimited keyword, which is going to be fun to test as well. So leaning towards 3. How many cards are you planning on releasing? The set that we made is about 400 cards. That includes all 5 of the classic corporations, the Brotherhood, and Algaroth of the Dark Legion. So for anyone who's not familiar with the Mutant Chronicles world, the short version is we destroy Earth. I don't know, global warming, nuclear war. Don't read the news. And the governments collapse, and the corporations who are in power, who own everything. As I'm saying this out loud, Fred, it creeps me out a little bit if anyone's keeping up with the net worth of Walmart and Starbucks and North Korea. Anyways, the corporations come into power and leave into space and colonize the rest of the planet or rest of the solar system. And one of them, Imperial, goes too far out and unleashes the demonic Dark Legion on humanity, who just wants to kill all humans. So there are 5 corporations in the original game. There's the Religious Brotherhood, who are kind of like the super modern future wizards. And then there are the 5 apostles of the Dark Legion. But when we organized all the cards, we realized that Algaroth, who is the Apostle of War, he's the main, you would say, the main apostle that comes out in all the lore most of the time. He had a ton of cards, like enough for 2 corporations worth. But the other 4 apostles didn't have enough to really even make a deck. Ilian, who's actually the first apostle, she almost had enough for a full playset. The other 3, which I will try to say out loud, and someone can make fun of me in Discord, but it's Semi-Demnogonus and I'm going to say Muhawi. It's one of those words you don't say out loud very often. They had barely any cards. So we made the decision to stick to just Algaroth. Although when we make it to our single player campaign story, we're definitely including Ilian in the story. But in order to get Ilian and the other 3 as playable cards, we're going to have to spend a lot of time with Brian, spend a lot of time with the designers that we're working with and the fans in the Discord to try to come up with what makes those guys special versus Algaroth, and how would that specialty translate to a card game. Because that's a problem that Brian never had to do in the old game. It was more of just like the Dark Legion were this thing and there were the individual followers, but we didn't have to make everything super unique. And I think that's a really exciting thing that we can do now. What is Fred saying? Muwaij? I'm not, no, I don't agree with that. Iceman, the Dark Soul. Are you assuming, is that the that shall not be named, the leader of the Dark Legion? If that's what you're referring to, the hierarchy we have is still similar to that. We have generic Dark Legion plans, and we have generic corporation called the cartel cards. And the idea in the, let's say the medium term, is that it is possible to make a generic cartel deck or a generic Dark Legion deck that doesn't follow a corporation or apostle. It's just trickier and there aren't as many cards. But I'm hoping that people find that a fun strategy to make these non-faction decks. It's kind of, I've played around with cartel decks that we have already, and it's been interesting. So yes, Iceman, we're planning on splitting the apostles into separate factions. There would still be the General Darkness guys that could be in any Dark Legion deck, but it would be, in our opinion, it would be really neat to focus on the one that starts with an M, Muwaij, his Lord of Visions, like, so making the opponent see things that aren't there. What if you had a card that could, change the cards in your opponent's hand into another faction's cards or something? I mean, I'm making that up. Don't hold me to that. But being that he's the Lord of Visions, what if he could make the other player see things that aren't there? Or what if he scrambled the stats on the card so you had to remember what the stats were? You couldn't just glance at it. Like, there's a lot of unique opportunities we could do with some of the other factions that we really want to spend time designing and trying to embrace a little bit. So I think it would be cool. And someone asked about White Star. Is it canon or not? So we're all one big family. Fred is the Godfather, and underneath Fred you have Secret Cow level with Doomtrooper, you have Protoss with Warzone, and you have Modifius with Siege of the Citadel and Mutant Chronicles. And we all follow the same lore, and we all follow the same canon. So if you're a fan, great. If you're not a fan, I'm sorry. But White Star is canon, and it's a pretty neat story when you read how they kicked the rest of the corporation's butts when they tried to come back to Earth. So they are canon, but they're not currently in Doomtrooper for the same reason the Apostles aren't, because we don't have enough. We'd have to design all the cards from scratch, and designing 50 to 100 cards and making it balance with all the other cards is tricky. So we definitely would like to add White Star, and we're still figuring out how to do that. Of course, if the Kickstarter goes like crazy and we get through all the Apostles, White Star is definitely on the table. But it's something that, it would take a lot of time of mine and Steve's and Brian's especially to design the cards, and then a lot of time to test them before they're launched into the game. But I do think White Star is pretty cool, and I'm glad it's in the canon. As to the tribes, no one specifically asked. There were the tribe factions in the final Doomtrooper expansion. They are unknown at this point. They are mentioned in canon, and they are connected to White Star, but we haven't figured out how that would fit into a new Doomtrooper, just in case anyone was curious. Oh man, don't ask for the official pronunciation of that one. It gets worse if you try to spell it. And I don't know if he's in here, but my friend Chris, who I grew up with playing Doomtrooper, he was the person who introduced Steve and I to it. That's his email address. I won't say at where, but his email address is the Lord of Vision's name. And I have to Google it every time I email him. So Chris, if you're in here, I don't think you are, but that's not cool, man. Let's see, what do we got in here? Bobby, I will tell Julie in case she didn't see it. Please tell her Nana hello from me as well. So, hope there are more strategies than play the biggest guy. Yes. So, that's a big problem that we want to fix, because we don't want people only playing the ultra rares. Like, you get Vince Diamond out from the Cybertronic Corporation, and he just whoops on everybody, and that's not something that makes the game fun. And it also leads to everybody who plays Cybertronic playing the same deck, which revolves around getting him out. So, for example, I don't know, it happened kind of quickly. This card is called Cartel Special Forces. They used to be two cards. It used to be, you can see the two guys in the art. It was Cartel Grunt and Cartel Soldier, and they're kind of worthless little weenie guys. They don't do anything. And when we tested, all of the people testing said, they don't do anything. We don't like these cards. So we tried to fix it. So what we did is, if they're both in your squad at the same time, they will combine into Special Forces, which currently is just a 4-4-4 guy. But there's so much more we can do with it as well. But this is what we're testing right now to make the little guys become more powerful. And I think it's a step in the right direction towards making balance work. We've also changed some cards like Positive Karma and Industrial Complex, because those were so powerful that everybody put them in every deck. And we don't want that. We don't want every deck to have the same, 3 of this card, 3 of that card, 3 of that card. It doesn't make it fun. Anyone who plays Hearthstone would definitely respect that in the last couple months with the Jade Druid class. Everybody played the same combination of cards because they were easy to get, and everybody would just be, it almost felt like they were cheating. And then you get frustrated and you don't want to play anymore. So we want to figure out a way to make all of the cards useful, as well as making the cards, we haven't said much about it yet, but we're working on a system, hopefully, whether or not it'll be in the core game, I'm not committed to yet, but we want a system where every single card in the game tracks when you use it, and it can level up individually. It won't affect the stats of the card, but as the card levels up, you can maybe get alternate art cards or alternate versions of the card to show off how much you've used that card. That way, anybody who wants to collect a complete set of all of the variant cards would be forced to use all of the cards, and hopefully forced to help us make those cards usable. So it's a long process for sure. I'd love to see the only thing we're talking about is how to pronounce the Lord of Vision's name. So, Let's see. Where is... All right, sorry, just restarting a little bit. So, Mwawije. Brian is saying Mwa. Wow. I swear I haven't been drinking. This is water. Mwawije is how we are going to pronounce it, apparently. So I just turned off demo mode. No one else has really seen this yet, but we do have, and these screens are definitely not final by any means, so please bear with me. But we have been playing around with some Cybertronic as well. Might as well show a little bit. So we still are balancing some of these cards. They're definitely more powerful than the rest, but you'll see some old friends like Vince Diamond, who we mentioned a few minutes ago, and Coral Beach is from the old set. One thing that people have complained about as well, which I'll mention, is the borders on the tokens are very thick. And one of the things that drew me to Doomtrooper back in the day, which seemed to draw a lot of people, is the artwork. So it's been acknowledged that the borders are too big on the tokens. It's on our list to fix things. People want to see more art, less granite borders. So you can expect to see bigger art on the tokens in a later alpha. And also, you can rest assured that we are working on variant cards that show more art on the card itself for people who want to see, you know, all of Coral Beach or all of Vince Diamond. So that'll be fun. We're also working on a nice tutorial system. Not a final one like you'll see in the retail version of the game, but we want to have something that at least introduces how to play the game enough that someone could, with enough energy and effort, could read the brief tutorial and understand how to play a game without someone having to hold their hand. So as we invite people to the alpha from the Kickstarter, we will be adding those things into the game so that it's much easier for a new player who's never played before to check it out. Also, I don't know if we've announced it yet, but the current set of cards, if you remember the first expansion, if you played the old game, the first expansion had relics, which were a very special type of equipment cards. They weren't equipment, they were their own types. We've made them, they're just attachments now. We've solidified or simplified the types of cards in the game, but every faction in the game currently has one relic, and it will be a rare card, and it is designed to be a really good card. But that we still are keeping the idea of relics as being these like amazing cards that you're going to want to play in your decks that have some fun. Hopefully, many of them will have like a digital only kind of ability. We're having fun playing with that, like things you can do digitally that you can't do physically, like cloning a card or creating a card out of nothing. I mean, I'm drawing a blank on all the other things that are possible, but there are many things, and some of them you've seen in other games that allow you to change a card in a way that physical would just be too hard to keep track of. So we like to have cards like the relics do stuff like that, so it feels really special when you use them. Will there be any specific enhancements like Key from Mishma Cyber? Yes. So we do have, I don't have any more points. We do have cybernetic enhancements for Cybertronic Corporation in right now, and we do have key powers for Mishma Corporation. It's part of the new rules where you're not mixing and matching factions anymore. You are just focusing on the one that you like, which means it gives us an opportunity to make those factions feel more unique. We've been working on systems that I'm not going to talk about yet, but systems that, especially for Cybertronic, the one we've been pen and papering, to make them feel very unique. Like if it works out in testing, the system that we've been working on, I think is kind of unlike any other system I've seen. It's not a copy of any other game, and it will make Cybertronic feel unlike any other corporation or faction in Doomtrooper, that when people play it, it'll be fun. And if you get bored with playing another faction and you come to Cybertronic, it'll almost feel like a new game, because they are part machine, part computer, and we need to embrace that and let them do fun things that make them feel like they're part robot. So I think that'll be fun. Can you take cover? Yes, you can. Currently, you just drag the guy to an empty spot, and he turns gray and has a cloud effect over him. Like the colors and the effects and stuff, I mean, this is our first attempt at some of the graphics. We want it to be good enough and good looking, but like I said, we have so much more that we would love to do. So cover is still part of the game, for the guy who asked, but the ability to add a warrior in cover at first, where your opponent doesn't know who he is not in the game currently. So you have to play the guy as one action, flip him as one action, or cover him as one. I see no Hearthstone RNG, and I see yes Hearthstone RNG. This is interesting. You guys will be happy to know that Steve, who is helping me on this, is in the no RNG camp. But I am in the yes RNG camp, because I admit that it's frustrating when you play a card that's like a coin flip. And if it's heads, you win the game, and if it's tails, you lose the game. And you hit tails. Like, that sucks. I get it. And it sucks when your opponent does it and he hits it and he wins. But it's also so exciting when you hit it. It's like going and betting your life savings on black and roulette. Don't do that. And hitting it. Like, I imagine, which I will never do, there's no greater feeling than like risking it all and hitting something. But it's also frustrating. So we definitely have both ends of the argument looking at the RNG thing. We don't want to have too many RNG things that make people frustrated, but a little bit here and there I think can be fun. Truth is, you cannot please everyone. This is true. So I'm just going to I'm going to make a game that I am very happy to play, and I have loved Doomtrooper for more than half my life. So I'm hoping that if I'm happy and I show it to you guys, you'll at least be partially happy, and if you're not, we can have a great discussion about why, and we can make the game even better. So please keep chatting with us on Twitch, on Discord, all that stuff. Are you really supposed to be able to take cover with your last warrior? That's a good question. Currently, yes, you can take cover with your last warrior, although Brian would have to let us know if that was a subset of the rules that I missed, that you should not be able to take cover with your last warrior, because that could be problematic. We have disabled frontline. I mentioned frontline means that you are forced to attack frontline warriors before you can attack any other warriors in the squad. If your frontline warrior goes into cover, he loses frontline. So you can't give yourself and for people who don't know, going into cover just increases your armor. It helps you survive a couple extra turns. You don't want somebody to be able to go into cover and then you can only attack him, but he's too powerful for you to hurt. It just doesn't work out. So we are testing things like that, and maybe your last guy won't be allowed to be in cover, but that's why we'll have testing. Yeah, we'll let random number generation decide whether or not we have random number generation. That's a good one. Oh, Mirrorman. So Mirrorman is a new card that we've added. It's just like a simple low guy. We're still playing around with him. But we've been going through all of the Protos book, and we've been going through the Modifius books, which we have most of them now. I think we're missing a couple. And there's a ton of really great characters, types that never made it into Doomtrooper that we'd love to do. But there's also, if you look at the Protos books, there's a ton of heroes. There's a ton of like specific personalities. And a couple people have came to me and they've asked if we're going to put those personalities into the game, and I would say the answer is probably. We'll probably put as many of the Warzone personalities in as we can over time, because some of them are really cool. And the Protos guys have the great 3D models that we could use and have an artist paint over top of and make some really amazing art for these new cards. So if you're a fan of the Warzone cards, let us know. If there's some reason you think we shouldn't use Warzone personalities, definitely let us know on social media and stuff, because some of them seem really neat, and We won't be following the exact card releases of the classic Doomtrooper. The set that we started with is probably 75% the basics from the base set, but we did pick and choose some from the other expansions to try to balance it out, and we will continue to do that. But we kind of have our own roadmap for what types of cards are going to be in the future expansions, and when we want to introduce. I mean, we have missions, we have war zones, we have vehicles, we have airstrikes. There's a ton of things that existed in the old Doomtrooper that we can pick from, and we've come up with a pretty interesting path for that. But right now our focus is just getting the core gameplay out, because if we can finish our Kickstarter and we can get this core set out and we can get it balanced, then the sky's the limit for what cards we can add in. Okay, so I see a question about one area. So yeah, so since you can only have one faction per deck, we don't need a squad and cohort. In the original Doomtrooper, you could mix Dark Legion guys and Corporation guys in the same deck, and they played to separate areas on your battlefield. But we don't have that mixture anymore, so we separate it down to just your squad. Cohort, I mean, you can call it a cohort if for nostalgia purposes, but the squad is all we have right now. And the question was about outposts. Going back to what I was saying earlier about the final expansion had tribes, and it also allowed you to battle on Earth. So if you battled, if anyone's played Elder Scrolls Legend, how it splits the map in half, and some guys fight on the left and some guys fight on the right. You could, I mean, there is no doubt that Doomtrooper did that first. I don't know if they did it first, but they did it before Elder Scrolls, because in the final expansion you could fight in space, say the left side, and you could fight at an outpost on Earth, which is the right side, and your opponent was forced to fight you wherever you had warriors. It's a very interesting gameplay mechanic, and it's something interesting enough, like I said, that games like Elder Scrolls are still doing it, but currently we just have the one battlefield. I don't want to go too far. Hopefully it's apparent that I know what you mean about the outposts. I personally, and this hasn't been approved by the rest of my team, I personally see a lot of connections potentially with outposts and war zones. And I have a pitched idea that I've mentioned a few times that I'm gonna make more formal to Brian and Steve and stuff, about how we could kind of combine those systems in a way where the lanes could be more dynamic and more interesting. But still just an idea at this point. But we will be talking about how to handle outpost lanes, war zones, all of that stuff. Although I don't know at this point the future of the tribes in Doomtrooper. But if somebody really loves the tribes from the last expansion, please talk to us in Discord and tell us why, and see what everyone else thinks. May I suggest to remove the all while in play on the cards and let it be implied? So we are trying to make all of the cards simpler. This deck is not a good example, but if you look at the Mishma deck that we were playing earlier, we've spent more time on the dialogue. So Samurai, for example, just says first strike. He doesn't say all the other magic that he needs to say. Bodyguard just says frontline. But then you have a few cards like Tatsu. He has a lot of text. So we're trying to get each of these cards down to the least amount of text as possible, and using as many keywords. And in the next version that we're working on, the big version of the UI, similar to the other games, something like Unique and Slayer will pop up next to the card and explain what those mean. So we don't need to describe Slayer means you kill a guy in one hit. It'll pop up on like a tooltip and it'll explain itself to you, so you'll be able to understand what it means without having to put it on every card. So we definitely want the cards to be as simple as possible. And some of the new Dark Legion cards we've been playing with, they still have the old text on them, and it's interesting to see people trying to code the cards, because the wording is so verbose that they think it's more complicated than it is. And then I tell them, I was like, oh no, this just does this one little thing, and they're shocked. So it's definitely a big task for us, but you'd be surprised how long it takes to go through even 20 cards and change the text to be legible, understandable, and consistent across all cards. I thought it was going to be an easy day, and it ended up taking an entire day to do the Mishma deck, so it's kind of interesting. So we got I mean, scheduled, we got about 8 more minutes if anybody has questions or wants to know anything about the game. Since the Kickstarter is live, I have much fewer secrets. I've been very secretive with a lot of the larger plans. I just I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That's the big thing, and I'm making that very clear to anyone who's watching this, that what I'm promising is in writing on the Kickstarter, and if I'm talking about any new or fun things, I'm talking about them because I'm excited that someday, with community support, that we'll be able to add them in. I will mention the first three stretch goals that we have were the crafting system, the quest system, and the Linux support. So we chose those because I feel like a crafting system is very important to be able to get rid of the cards you don't want to earn the cards that you do. So that's kind of a no-brainer for a feature to put in. The quest system is kind of all-encompassing. It includes, like, every time you log in, we'll give you a reward. Some games do that, some games don't. But we want to reward people. If you log in 7 days in a row, you should get like at least a free pack or something, because you are a great supporter of what we've created if you're logging in every day for 7 days in a row. But we also want to be able to do the daily quests, where we give you a thing to do. We give you maybe another thing to do in your chosen faction. Like, there's so many ways we can expand that system, but we want to make sure that, unlike some of the other games on the market, that when you log in, you always have something to do. And that something isn't just to rise the leaderboards. It's not just to beat a single player battle in a different way that you've already beat it. Like, there should always be something fun and some way to work towards the goal. You want more packs, you should be able to work towards that. You want more, you want Tatsu because that was your first card you ever owned, then we should figure out a way to help you earn Tatsu. Maybe a quest that allows you to get him at the expense of not getting some other cards. I don't know. But I always want there to be something that you can work towards, similar to how anyone who knows me knows I played a large portion of my life in MMORPGs, which I regret now because I could have made Doomtrooper 10 years ago. But there was always a goal. When I logged in, there was some quest I was trying to finish, and it made me want to log in. It made me want to play the game. It made me feel a connection to the game that I just don't feel to Elder Scrolls or Hearthstone or any of the other games. They're great at their esports nature, but I don't have that connection. And over the next, say, 6 months at least or less, we're going to be exploring that connection and trying to figure out how to make you really feel like you're doing something you want to do as opposed to something you have to do in the game. So Dark Symmetry is asking how you deal with cards like miscommunication. That is the million-dollar question. The original plan was pretty complicated. And I'll go ahead and say it here. I'm saying original plan, not current plan. But it might be the current plan. Who knows? The original plan was to allow it to function just like the old games. Every time your opponent plays a card, you have a brief period to stop him and interrupt him with another card. But there are a lot of problems with that, because if you can interrupt your player, you control them by interrupting them every time and then not doing something. And we don't want that. So we planned this idea where that we could allow you to interrupt the player for 3 seconds or less. And you have 3 seconds to play your interrupt, and that's it. And if you need more time, you can stop the clock. But you only have 30 seconds of freezing time for the entire match. So if you stop the clock for 10 seconds and then you stop it again later, you only have 20 seconds left. You stop it for 10 seconds again, you only have 10 more for the next one. And when you're out forever, and you have that 3-second window every time, and that's it. And that works in theory. But is it fun to wait 3 seconds every time your opponent plays a card? Is it fun to make the game 20 minutes long instead of 10 minutes long, just because you wanted to interrupt 1 out of 40 moves? I don't know. Hearthstone said no, it's not fun, and they took that feature away. But other games, like Magic, have done it. But honestly, I don't like Magic Online. Waiting to interrupt somebody doesn't feel right. And that I mentioned having that connection to the game. If the game feels like it's dragging on, I don't have a connection. I don't feel attached to it. I don't want to play it. So we are toying with that idea, and we're bringing in cards that can interrupt the player, starting with combat cards. So during combat, you will be able to play cards during your opponent's turn when he attacks you. And we're going to start there and see how that feels, and then we're going to work our way out to whether or not we should allow people to interrupt other moves as well. The engine that we've created does allow it. We're still, you know, fine tuning everything, but it's been there since the foundation. But we don't want to put it in just for nostalgia and have the game not feel right. So, long-winded answer to the interruption cards, but it's definitely something we're thinking about and we talk about all the time in Discord. So please chat with us in there. Fred asks if I know Ken Erickson. I do not know Ken Erickson, Fred. So, oh, the other stretch goal we have listed is the Linux support. As I said earlier, I do all my testing on Linux, and I do my development on Linux, but packaging is tricky. So we're going to start with the Linux distro that I'm most familiar with, and probably Ubuntu if we hit that stretch goal. And if we do the Ubuntu package, that goes to a lot of other versions of Linux. And we've had a little bit of interest from the Linux gaming community, which turns out it's a thing. So it would be very nice to support them because I am a big fan of Linux, and it'll be great. And shortly after that, you will start seeing some stretch goals like localization, because we would very much like to get this game. We recognize that this game's success was partially the art, partially Brian's awesome game design, and partially the fact that it was translated into Spanish, Italian, Swedish, all of these languages that made people very happy. You could play a game in your native language as opposed to having to force yourself to read in English. And as a person who barely speaks Spanish, I can't imagine being forced to play an amazing game in Spanish. Like I would try it, but I would just be drawn towards the English one because I don't want to put that much effort into thinking about it. So we definitely want to get localization out as well. So if we can blow through these stretch goals, you're definitely going to see the translation stuff come very quickly, which should make a lot of the other communities. I mean, shout out to the Italian community, if any of them are awake, the Czech community, the Spanish community, and I believe the slightly less organized Swedish community. I haven't seen them have a dedicated Swedish portal yet, but maybe I'm mistaken. But those guys have been keeping this alive for the last 20 years, and we don't want to forget about them. Poland too. Don't want to forget about Poland. Anybody who loves this game should be able to play it in their native language, and I can't take time away from and money away from getting the cards implemented to implement the languages. But if we can raise enough money that we move past the things that we've promised, then I definitely recognize the value of getting you guys native languages. So do we have any other questions that people want to know while I'm feeling generous? I also haven't checked the Kickstarter in an hour. All right. It's gone up 3%. I can deal with that. Thank you again to everyone who's been backing, especially our friend who backed the designer tier. He's going to get to design his own card with Brian and I's help. And I mean, you know, obviously we can't let him design a card that makes him win every game, but he's going to get to make his mark on the Doomtrooper and the Mutant Chronicles universe as a whole. And I know they're expensive in the top ones, and they're tricky, but I believe that the rewards can be worth it. If I were on the other end of this Kickstarter, I would definitely want to back, when I was designing the tiers, I would definitely want to do the 2,500, but I wouldn't afford it. And I would try really hard to do the 1,000 because we are going to work with Brian's help. And we've already run it by Modifius and Mutant Chronicles guys and Fred, where we can put your name somewhere in the Mutant Chronicles lore. It can be the name of a character in a story. It can be the name of a gun put out by the Punisher Corporation. It can be the name of an airship. Like something about your name. If you've loved this game as long as I've loved it, one of the old school guys, you can put your name forever into the current state of the universe, which hopefully will lead to the 4th, 5th, 6th edition, the rest of the Mutant Chronicles world. If we make a cool enough character together, or a cool enough name, you know, so you'll be able to tell people that you are part of that universe. And it's a pretty cool trophy. But I know the prices are high for the top few things. That's why there's only just a few of them. But I hope at least somebody thinks they're as cool as I did, because I was pretty proud of those few designer type perks that we were able to offer. Asked about the timeline for the alpha and the beta. The alphas right now, we have somewhere less than 50 people. The top members in our Discord, as well as the Mutant Chronicles people, some friends and family that do some testing. We just really want people in here that are going to understand that it's a really early alpha. I mean, it's a private alpha. You can see it's playable. It's got some shiny things on it. You know, you put a guy into cover and he's got effects. Like the systems are all there, but there's so much more we can do. And a lot of people will look at this, and I'm sure some people here have dropped in, saw the stream, and dropped back out. And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm just going to go play Elder Scrolls," and it's like, great. Like Elder Scrolls has 5.1 surround sound, and it has, you know, like a couple $1 million worth of 3D models and particle effects, and it looks amazing. And I would love to get there too, but we're building it piece by piece, and people who understand that and they want to help balance the game, and they want to give good suggestions to how we can improve it. Stuff like, you know, make the characters 3D. That's a great suggestion, but it's not something we can do right now. In the future, we raise more money. The sky's the limit, but we want people in the alpha right now that are able to understand how hard we're working and why everything in the game is like it is. And, you know, the difference between a final window and a temp window, you know, like when you click on a card, like this is not a final interface. This is just something that's completely testable. You can drag and drop things out of the window. You can swap the window up and down to make sure that you can target anything on the screen, but it's by no means what the final game is going to look like. So we're going to keep inviting people in that have the right attitude and can help us out and want to help us out, as well as some of the backer tiers offer alpha access. So as soon as the Kickstarter ends and the charges go through, we'll invite those people in, and if they're the ones who are the wrong type of alpha player, I mean, we're gonna go with it. But the beta, the date we listed on the Kickstarter is January of next year, and we're doing everything in our power to get to beta by that point. So we'll be able to offer a balanced game with deck building and testing cards, testing purchasing of packs, opening packs, all those systems, and letting people really dive in and make their own decks and stuff. And that's basically what we're calling beta. We'll probably still remove a handful of cards and add a handful of cards to fill in some gaps that we find during testing, but I think it'll be a really solid gameplay experience. And then, as I listed on the Kickstarter, we'll have a beta 2 that will be sometime after that. That will basically say we have a really balanced game now, and all the cards are finalized, and we're not changing anything. And we'll be able to, we might even be able to do an open beta at that point where we're technically live, leaderboards are live, cards are live, all that stuff, collections are live, but we'll still be tweaking the graphics. But the cards will be nailed down because, like I said, we're doing an inside-out approach where we want the rules to be solid, we want the gameplay to be solid, and then we'll make everything beautiful. More beautiful. Don't want to give any offense to Travis's lovely work on the art. Luke asked if there'll be a retail cost for the game. No, the game will be free to install, free to download. The current plan, not in writing, as I said earlier, but the current plan that we have internally is to show you a brief tutorial of some kind and allow you to pick your favorite faction. And then you will receive enough cards for that faction to start the game and play. The other faction packs will be available either by playing different tutorials or purchasing, perhaps, if you don't want to play the tutorials but you just want to get the starter cards. And then moving forward, you'll be able to earn packs for free. And I want to be as liberal as we can with the giveaways, but hopefully we can all be adults enough to recognize that a free-to-play game is not free to make, and it's not free to sustain server cost-wise. So we will be offering the ability to buy cards and cosmetic items and stuff in order to keep the company alive and do more expansions and that kind of stuff. But we want to make sure that the game is free to play, and we want to be more liberal than something like Hearthstone with the giveaways. Something with, you know, login rewards, like I was saying, and extra quests and that kind of thing. What will your philosophy be on nerfs and buffs to cards once the game goes live? Well, very similar to what other people are doing, I would say. Once we start taking people's money, I want to be pretty happy with the state of the cards. And if we have to change a card, similar to the Hearthstone debacle of the last month I mentioned earlier with the Jade Jade Druids, they if you change somebody's card that is central to their deck, they're going to get mad. So in that case, we need to compensate the person. So my philosophy is that don't change a card unless we have to after people have paid for them. And if we do change it, make sure we have a good reason and we have some sort of compensation package that will at least make the person not feel, horribly angry at us. We'll be able to have multiple decks as in multiple factions. Yes. Currently, we have no limit on the number of decks you can have. However, that will prove to be a problem at some point. So we'll probably limit it to 10 to 12 decks, maybe. We're not sure yet. But you can have multiple decks that are whatever factions you want. When you create a deck, you can choose which faction you want it to be. And the deck builder will help you make sure that you stick within the rules of the faction. Cap to the total number of cards. If you mean in your collection, no. If you mean in your deck, yes. Currently, we're testing 40, but we've talked about allowing the player to do 40 to 60 and giving them a choice. We're going to have to bring Brian in on that and get his opinions a little bit more, but the benefit to 40 is that everyone has the same playing field. But 40 to 60 is kind of nice because if you have 40 cards, you're more likely to draw the one you need. But if you have 60 cards, you have more options. So there's a greater strategy. I'm sure you do have opinions, Brian. We will get them very soon. We will have a nice long chat on deck building in the next 4 weeks. But I personally like the 40 to 60 range because some decks focus on drawing one card. Some decks focus on cycling through cards faster. So if you had a strategy that involved cycling through cards and you wanted 60 instead of 40, I like to allow that, have a little bit more choice. But Brian is usually of the camp to want to have less choice. So we'll have a heated discussion and we will test it all and we will allow the alpha testers to test it and we'll figure out what's best. Trading cards. I answered this on Kickstarter today. Trading physical cards is amazing. And it's so much fun to have a rare Dark Legion card that you don't use and trade it to somebody for that Vince Diamond you're missing to complete your deck. Digitally, though, it's tricky. And what makes it tricky is what I said about giving away a lot of cards. I want lots of giveaways. I want free packs. I want free quests. I want all this stuff that we could give you guys just because you play the game. I want to reward you and make you have fun. And if you have fun, hopefully you'll spend a little bit of money and you'll buy some cosmetics and you'll buy some more packs. And everyone will have a great time and we'll keep making a great Doomtrooper, and that's awesome. But if I give you a bunch of freebies and then you go and make a second account with a different email address and I give you a bunch of more freebies, and then you do it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, and then you take all those freebies and you trade all the rares back to your main account. Now you have the best cards. And the only way for someone to compete with you is for them to do the same thing, which isn't cheating, but it's kind of cheating the system a little bit. So in order for us to allow trading, we would have to maybe get rid of all the freebies. And then we're not really doing what we set out to do. So currently there is no trading, but it's always been discussed. We've discussed and I mean, don't hold me to this, it's just an idea as an example. But what if you can trade a card to another player, but the person who initiates the trade pays $1? Something like that. Something like that might limit the guy who wanted to do all those trading because he doesn't want to pay real money. The whole reason he's cheating the system is so he doesn't have to buy cards. So if we make him pay money to trade, then he might say, never mind, I'm not going to do that, which would allow valid players to do actual trades. So we're investigating what kind of thing we could do, and I'd love for more people to come in Discord and chat about that because the system I've set up, each card has a unique fingerprint. I can track which card, who had it and who traded it, and when did they trade it, when did they get it, where did it come from. So the foundation for trading is built into the technology that we've created, but the problem with people abusing the system is not something you can solve with just technology. It needs a proper design. So, however you say your name, is it Kledge? If you have any opinions on that, feel free to drop in because I want to know how I can give away lots of free stuff and still allow people to trade without breaking the system. So we'll see. So that's pretty close to all I got, other than we're going to be working on some sort of social media promotion that'll be starting very soon. And we want to try to get our likes up on Facebook, our Twitter followers up, our Instagram followers up, our Twitch followers up. And if we can hit milestones on getting these followers, we're just going to start giving away lots of free stuff to all of the backers. So we'll give away free packs. I mean, we can give away anything, really. Some people are a fan of cosmetics, so we'll probably give away some cosmetic stuff. Sometimes we might give away just more packs to make people happy. Maybe we can give away a variant card for something that has more art that makes people happy. I mean, we're going to talk about it and figure out what people want. So if there's something you want for free, come tell us, because the more people that like our posts and share our posts, the more people that see it. So even if you can only back $15, if you share and like everything and then your friends see it and they share and like it, eventually down the line someone's going to come in and be like, oh, I want the $60 pack, and all of a sudden we made more money off you and all you had to do was share and like it. So it's very important to us, and I think people realize that, but they don't really realize it. Like, it's almost the best thing you can do is to just tell people, because there's so much noise on the internet these days. I mean, I don't know how to get more people to realize that we're making this cool thing. So you guys can help, and we'll give you free stuff. So we're working on that. And yeah, Kledge, real money trading, it would definitely lead to real money trading. Maybe if we charge people for trades, it would hurt that. I don't know, but it's all part of the big discussion that we gotta talk about. So I'll hang out for another couple minutes in case anybody has any additional questions, and then I'm going to go back to manically watching the Kickstarter numbers go up and down. Hopefully just up. And thank you guys for coming. Thanks for checking everything out. I didn't make it part of the Kickstarter, but we will have some kind of get together, whiskey party for our 21 and older fans here in the Los Angeles, California area. And if you're a backer of the project and you want to come hang out when the project's winding down, please hit us up on Discord and we'll see what we can do. Just I didn't want to put it as part of the Kickstarter because a lot of times people do that. And I don't want people to think that I'm going to spend Kickstarter money on a party, because that's not at all what we're going to do. But if I have to pick up a bar tab for my friends myself, I'm totally willing to do that because I'm nice like that. And I'm not the best person in front of the camera. I know I made it look good on the Kickstarter video, but we're working on a bloopers video so you can see how horrible I really was. Richard, our editor, is a wonderful, wonderful wizard, and he made me look a lot better than I am. So thank you for putting up with my weird mouth noises and saying all the time. But I'm sure as we do this more and more, I'll get a little more comfortable, and we can all become best friends. And thank you again for Fred and Brian, Julie. I think Steve's in here as well. Everybody from the Doomtrooper family who has come to hang out in this chat as well. And they've been around since day one, helping everything out. Brian Winter, original designer of the game, allowing us to come to his home in Wisconsin and stay near him for a couple days and work with him was a real honor. And getting to hang out with Fred and Jay and the cabinet guys has been super awesome as well. The wealth of information that I have about Doomtrooper, you should talk to these guys, because not only them, some of the guys in Discord know more than they do. I'm sorry, Fred, but like shout out to Nipa, or I think it's pronounced Nipa, in Discord, who played, I believe he played in the World Championship, and he taught me things about variant Doomtrooper physical cards that I'd never heard of before. So uh, it's been crazy. Yeah, Nipa knows all. I I mean I didn't know there were autograph cards in the Inquisition expansion. I didn't know there were two different types of glossy variants in the Warzone expansion. It's I didn't know there were Monopoly cards in one of them. Fred, somebody got a Monopoly card inside a pack of Doomtrooper once. So that's interesting. And please tell anyone you know if you have any Mutant Chronicles or gaming communities or your Facebook friends. I mean, just start now sharing our post, liking our all of our social media, liking and following. Just anything you could do to spread the word. You don't even have to tell people. Like if you like Doom Trooper, a lot of times it'll show up on your friends' feeds automatically. Like, oh, so and so liked Doom Trooper. You should check it out. And hopefully, this really awesome Siege of the Citadel art that we were lucky enough to borrow will draw in their eyes, and they will be forced to come join our horde of players. Yeah, Fred, somebody found a Monopoly card in a pack of Doom Trooper. Blame your printer, I'm sure, but that was a good one. So thank you so much, guys. As always, pretty much 17 hours a day, I'm hanging out in Discord. The link is at the top of the Kickstarter. It's been posted in here a few times. It's on our website currently until the website starts redirecting to the Kickstarter. So just come in. I'm at the top of the list. I'm Justin. Say hi. Steve's in there too. He's real quiet, but please force him to talk, and maybe he will respond. And if we're lucky, you'll see Julie in there as well, helping with our marketing. Andrew, if he's watching as well. Andrew has been helping with all the art on the Kickstarter, and he's helping with some of the changes we're making to the UI. And we have Chris, who I don't know anybody who's actually seeing it, but Chris is a friend from London or from England, who is a wizard with some of the visuals, and he's been doing amazing work so far. As well as Alex has been helping script cards with my friend Brad, who is helping me get all of these crazy Dark Legion cards implemented. So if I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. I know I mentioned Richard earlier for the video editing. It's been crazy, and I can't believe that I'm showing this to people and talking to people, and that 20 of you are on the internet watching me talk about it. But I'm glad you're as crazy as I am, so thank you so much, and let's try to get this to its goal. Thank you again to everybody.